Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Lee Haller, and I'm the Director of Innovation and Performance for the City of Pittsburgh. I want to thank all of you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to be here this morning. I know, obviously, with the weather, it was a little extra difficult this morning, so we have an intrepid group. Thanks for making it out. Today, we're going to focus on a roundtable discussion for city operations as part of our roadmap for inclusive innovation. So our agenda for this morning, first of all, I'm going to take a few minutes and give you some history on the roadmap so everybody has some context for today's discussion. We're going to have some brief presentations about some of the actions that are specific to city operations that have been undertaken over the last several years, so you can get an idea about some of the things that we've been working on. Then we're going to talk in our small groups and react to the presentations that you heard, see if you have ideas for how we can build on some of those initiatives, and if you have ideas for new initiatives that we need to be working on to improve city operations. And we do have an interesting mix of cross-departmental representatives plus some representatives from outside organizations that can provide a different perspective for us. And then finally, we're going to provide just some brief reflections on the individual group discussions, and then Anya is going to talk a little bit about next steps and where we go from here. So first of all, just so everybody's clear, what is the roadmap for inclusive innovation? Essentially, this is a strategic plan for the city. When Mayor Peduto came into office in 2014, I think he correctly recognized that we have finite resources that we can put towards new initiatives, and we needed to be really thoughtful and strategic about how we were spending our time and our money. So the idea behind the roadmap is to provide that strategic plan that can guide our actions. In 2014, Mayor Peduto convened 5 different roundtable discussions, including representatives from lots of different organizations here within the city, also external government partners, private sector, community organizations, the universities, et cetera, to talk through what should be on our strategic plan and what should be included in the roadmap for inclusive innovation. And out of that discussion, we came up with 6 different focus areas that you can see on the screen. The focus areas are addressing the digital divide, providing open data to Pittsburgh, advancing the clean technology sector, empowering city-to-citizen engagement, improving the city's internal operations and capacity, and promoting local business environment. Each of those focus areas has specific goals that are outlined in the plan, and then each of those goals is supported by specific measurable action items that we want to accomplish. Today's discussion, as I mentioned before, is solely focused on city operations, so that's going to be our focus today. One of the things that we're most proud of with our work with the Roadmap for Inclusive Innovation is the amount of community support and engagement that we've been able to foster as part of this process. We have 61 different partner organizations that are working with the city to make this plan a reality. They could be leading one of the specific action items on the roadmap, or they could be sponsoring an activity as part of Inclusive Innovation Week that Christine mentioned. And I should mention that our second Inclusive Innovation Week is coming up March 31st through April 7th this year. So hopefully you'll all have an opportunity to get involved with that. So to give you some perspective on our overall roadmap progress, I mentioned that we have specific action items that were identified in the plan. There were 102 specific action items that were identified across the 6 different focus areas. Currently, we are either complete or underway with 76 of those 102 action items. For improving city operations specifically, there were 24 action items that were identified. 20 of those are either complete or underway, and you're going to hear about a number of those in a few minutes. So with that introduction, I want to hand it off to Laura Meixel, who's the Assistant Director of Performance Improvement.
Thanks, Lee. Hi, everybody. Good morning. Thank you so much for coming. I'm pretty excited about this meeting because I'm really excited about all the people that are in this room. Lots of good friends, some new people, and I think that we are set to have some really good conversations. So I'm just curious, can I see some hands about who was in the first round of Inclusive Innovation meetings? Let me just see. Just a few, not so many. Okay, well, that's really interesting. So for you folks, I would definitely recommend that you, at some point during this time that we're together, take a look at the document that's in the middle, which is the Inclusive Innovation Roadmap, and see for yourself a little bit more about how the activities that we are working on sort of fit into the categories that were developed as a part of this, and maybe get a little bit of a sense of some of the activities that are taking place with this as a part of the broader framework, and especially with our external partners. So I'm just introducing two of the folks from our teams in INP who are going to talk a little bit about our projects. So I think that most of you are at least tangentially aware of the BirdEye View project and of the process improvement work that we've been doing up here. But I just want to frame this by saying that I think we've come a long way in the last 18 months with these things. And we're now in a really good place, I think, to engage with you and to really think about how we can make sure that these programs have the biggest impact going forward, and really work for you where you are and where your teams are to bring us all forward. So with that, Srini.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm Srinidhi Jagannath, and I am the Process Improvement Trainer with the Department of INP for City of Pittsburgh. And I'm here to talk to you today about process improvement and how it can be used as a tool to improve or optimize our operations that we do on a daily basis. So before I start with what is process improvement, I want to ask you a question. So how many of you in your daily activities feel that, why do I do this? With a small few tweaks that I can improve the way I do a lot of things around here. So that's the first step to actually thinking about process improvement, by asking the question, why? Why do I do a lot of things? To give a simple example, if I was to submit a request for a vacation, I would have to fill out a physical form, sign it, and give it to my supervisor. And then, if it had to be approved by another supervisor, they would review the paper and forward it to another person. And this is a physical process which has a lot of time constraints on it. And at the same time, I will be waiting to hear back on this because there are communication silos, unless my supervisor finds out and then eventually I find out about it. So I just begin by asking the question, what if all of this could be automated? And then we go towards analyzing why not. If we already have some of these resources to improve this process and also save some of the times that we invest in filling out a physical form, and try to improve that and have more resources for other stuff that is my process improvement activity, that would be a benefit. This brings us to the next question. Why do process improvement? So if we look at our organizational strategy, for any organization, for the city of Pittsburgh, that could be provide the best type of resources or services to the citizens. We can divide it in short-term and long-term objectives. For any organization, cost reduction is a very critical part of what we do, while also maintaining our customer service levels. As a long-term objective, it is to improve our productivity at the same time maintaining our customer service levels. And this can be achieved by constantly using process improvement as an iterating process and making it into a company culture wherein we save a lot of resources, be it time or cost or quality, and have those resources redeployed to other stuff that require those resources that we do not actually have time to support right now. So we can use some of the tools in process improvement to affect these changes. One of the most popular and highly viewed tool is Six Sigma. And we typically use this tool when we do not know a solution to a problem. We know we have a problem, but we do not know how to solve it, or we do not know what the root cause of this problem is. And that is when we try to use Six Sigma using 5 defined toll gates that's define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. And as we move through these different toll gates, we determine what our root cause of the problem is and try to effect improvements and use action points to actually change that problem into an improved process. Another one would be 5S, which stands for sort, straighten, standardize, shine, and sustain. And for another simple example would be, I have my cubicle where I arrange all my phone, my computer, my documents, my papers, my pens, everything in such a way that with the least movement possible, I can access every one of those in an instant. And if I had to get a call from my supervisor asking what happened to this particular RFP, or where did you keep this particular vendor request that we had to send out, I can immediately access it without wasting time. In the smallest way, we are saving some of our resources, that is time. And imagine how many resources we could save if this could be implemented to a citywide project. Another thing would be just do it. I have a lot of problems within my process. Like I said, I know some things I can tweak and immediately start impacting my process. That is a just do it project. Why don't we just do it? Nike. And process mapping. So for more complex processes, we can divide our operation into different steps and see what activities are adding value and what activities are not adding value. So when I say not adding value, that just means what the end user or the customer cares about. So if I, as a customer or a resident of the city, just cares about my trash being picked up, would I care about waiting on the phone to get to a representative? So these are value-added and non-value-added activities. So now we move to what the city has been doing in terms of process improvement training. We've actually conducted 2 process improvement boot camps in 2015 and 16 with close to 40 participants and identified 7 different projects, of which 4 were completed during 2015 and 3 are being enacted right now. And this is centrally managed by the in-house process improvement trainer, that is me. And also, we collaborate with each of these teams and also share our project documentation using SharePoint as a collaborative tool. No, I know I am advertising SharePoint here, but that is also a process improvement tool. So if you're wondering how you want to do this, you can get in touch with me and I can help you out on that. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Jeffrey Arnold. I'm a performance improvement analyst, part of the analytics and strategy team, and I'm going to be talking to you about BirdEye View. A lot of you know, yeah, he's really cute, right? So a lot of you have probably seen our public-facing website that we launched back in October, showing police incidents and a lot of other things. But what you might not know about, and it's at data.pittsburghpa.gov if you're ever curious about what's going on in your neighborhood. But what you might not know is actually how it started. So BirdEye View has very humble beginnings with the Public Safety Department, specifically with the Pittsburgh Bureau of Police. There was an antiquated system that the Police Bureau was using called MapStats. And it had not been working for them correctly for a number of years, and so we sought to replace that with a different product. And the goal of this was to show officers, essentially their beat, where they worked. There's 3 shifts that they have every day, and you can't know everything that's going on right away. So it allows us to give them a map of, incidents of crime, 911 calls, and then also, some other information, such as 311 requests that the police handle, traffic accidents, as well as condemned buildings. Before you go into respond to something, you might want to know if that's a safe structure. And so this is what it looks like currently today for the police, and you can see it's very similar to the version that you can see on your home device. But there's some specific differences that I'm not going to show you in detail because there's a reason that they're not in the public version, right? There's for safety concerns. But they are able to see exactly where things are going on, and it's updated for them every night based off of the information that they are putting in. When we first were working with them on what's called geocoding, or figuring out where the pin on the map goes, we were finding a lot of addresses that didn't necessarily exist, and actually as they've been using this application, they're actually putting in more correct addresses. I-376 on-ramp isn't actually a location that any mapping software is going to recognize, and so we've seen that that's been improving. So I'm going to show you a couple of screenshots of the police data on the public one. So what they're able to do is go in, click on an incident, and actually get information on that. And for them, we also let them go right into their narrative police report. Here, where there's the CCR number for police officers, they can click on there and get an actual, in-depth description of the incident that an officer saw and occurred. And so they can get, more information than just the general, what offense happened and the UCR hierarchy. And actually, BirdEye View is evolving even more for the police. So we have a joint project with the CMU to identify hotspots for both crime and violent property. So with the Intel unit, we've been working with CMU for them to do predictive analytics on, where they think crime hotspots are that police officers need to go to. And so we're working with Zone 5 to determine these areas that, the police are going to, go to, and they'll be identified on the map. So they'll go in for what's called a park and ride, go in, get on the ground, and hopefully, prevent crimes before they happen. Now, we don't have, minority reports type technology, but we're at least trying to make sure that police officers are in areas that we know these violent and property crimes are occurring. And the public safety version is not the only version of BirdEye View that exists. So there's a few of you in here that we've actually been working on. There's a finance version that we're working on with Ed Barca. We've worked with both the City Council has their own version of the map, as well as the Fire Department, and we're working on one with PLI. DPW has one showing the 311 requests and their locations as well. And hopefully you all can see and determine from this picture, which bird is yours, right? So here I'm just going to show a quick screen cap of the latest version of the finance one that we're working on. This one's really, really neat. It's very different from the other version of BirdEye View. It actually maps out the locations of each property parcel in the city. And when you click on it, you'll get information, as well as we pull from the county real estate's website the image of that parcel as well, which is pretty neat. So we're, as you can see down here, there's a nice little key that'll show you. So we're showing for the finance, they can easily see, which properties are abated, which ones do the URA own, which ones do they own, as well as who's delinquent on their taxes. So we're working to make this, even more useful for just a different view besides tables and spreadsheets for finance, so that you can get an idea of the health of a community. I picked downtown because it's pretty. So again, data.pittsburghpa.gov is where you can see that public version. But for each of you, each department, we're working to make a tailored version of BirdEye View that helps with their business processes and how they can do things. So for the fire department, one of their big things is having the amount of time that it took for them to respond to a call. So they're able to filter and look, when did it take us more than 8 minutes to respond to something, that sort of thing. So for each department, we've customized it, and a lot of those things have made their way to the public-facing version. And this is tying into this whole open data side. So the public version of BirdEye View, pulls all of its information from the Western Pennsylvania Regional Data Center, which has been a big, focus of our team, and getting information up there, because it's city data and it's public information, and people should have quick and easy access to it. We've been going out to community meetings these past few weeks, and it's been very interesting to hear the concerns of people. And we've heard that people are using BirdEye View a lot in their community, but there's also more information that they'd like to get from everyone's department here. So I'm doing a little plug for ourselves. Come to us if you think that you have information that the people out there want to see, because it's going to be something that I know we're also working with OMB on getting capital projects up on here very shortly, which would be really interesting to see people, where are we investing in their community, not just, what they hear on the news. I think one of the biggest problems for the city is us telling our story to the citizens, and I think BirdEye View is a really great tool that people can easily use. And everyone loves to. The first thing that people do when we show this to them is zoom into their community and see what's going on. And we want to be able to give a holistic view of all those things. All right.
Which way to go?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Peter McDevitt. I'm the Asset Management Analyst for the Office of Management and Budget.
My name is Matt Jacob. I'm a Project Implementation Analyst with the Department of Public Works, and we're here to talk to you about our Strategic Investment and Maintenance Plan and Carta Graphs.
It's very exciting stuff. We have lots of fun with it. It is important. So we're going to start talking about the Strategic Investment and Maintenance Plan. So it's two parts. The first part is the Facilities Optimization Plan, which is kind of split up into three different parts. You'll do a physical conditions assessment, We hired Macero Corporation to go in and look at all of our roofs, all of our HVAC systems, all the foundations, everything in all of our buildings, and grade them and tell us what's wrong with them. We know that all of our buildings are in bad shape, but we need to know specifically what we need to work on. They're also going to do a programmatic assessment. So they're going to look at all of our buildings and what we do with them. What are the programming that's going on there? Do we have a rec center or a senior center in a community that should be flip-flopped? How many warehouses do we have? How many storage facilities? Are we not utilizing those so well? And part of asset management isn't just maintaining your assets, but it's utilizing your assets to fill those programmatic needs that you have. They're also going to do a marketability and disposition analysis. We have a lot of buildings that we don't use, and instead of just keeping those active that we don't use, we can get rid of them. We can take them off of our portfolio. It's one less thing to worry about, and we could then use those funding that we get from the disposition of a facility to put into other facilities that need it. So phase 2 is everything else. All of our sidewalks, all of our streets, all of our playgrounds, all of our ball fields, everything. So the first thing we need to do is confirm our inventory. We talked about facilities and we didn't have a complete list of them. We had several different lists, but also for everything else, we don't have a list of walls, we don't have a list of fences. We just need to confirm what we have. And then we're going to complete a conditions assessment of everything to see what's wrong with it, what do we need to fix. And then for both of those, we're going to create long-term investment and maintenance strategy. So how much money do we need to fix these things, and how do we prioritize those? So why are we doing this? In June of 2015, the mayor put out an executive order saying that we need to complete the strategic investment and maintenance for this city-owned facility. So we started with facilities, and then all of our other assets. In 2014, Act 47 said you need to invest in your facilities and assets that you have now. It doesn't make sense to just have a short-term savings and let things crumble and fall apart, and then have to invest way more money later on just to bring them back up to be usable. So you need to, it doesn't make sense. You don't not change the oil in your car regularly, because then you'll need an entirely new engine. It's much cheaper to change the oil out. So just to use that as an example of everything else, we should be patching roofs, we should be maintaining HVAC systems and boilers on a regular basis instead of waiting until they fall apart and then spending a lot more money to fix them. So this is the direction that we want to head in. On the left is where we were, and the right is where we want to be. We're somewhere in the middle right about now. I won't talk about all of these, but my favorite ones are the multiple versions of multiple lists. I talked about facilities. I had about 6 different lists of facilities that had different information on all of them. So we didn't have a single source for all that information. Same with walls and bridges and steps. We don't have those inventories, and we have multiple lists. Even within departments, they would have multiple lists that they're working off of. We need one list that everybody in the whole city can go and utilize. Right now, we're reactive. We wait until a roof starts leaking or falling in rather than going out and patching them before that stuff happens. We wait until the boiler bursts until we replace it in a senior center. We need to make sure we're doing regular maintenance on those things and planning ahead so that we know we need to replace the roof at the Morningside Senior Center in 10 years. So we have that in the budget 10 years from now. That money is already set aside for it. We're not scrambling to find it. What was the other one? We have too many facilities and assets that are in poor and critical condition. And the portfolio constructed for the city was significantly more population. So our city was built for over 600,000 people at its peak. We have almost half that now. We don't need as many rec, senior centers, swimming pools, storage facilities, because we don't have the people, we don't have the tax base to pay to upkeep those things. We need to right size our portfolio. And we need to improve the conditions in those facilities that people work in.
All right, so that's where we were. So how do we get to where we want to be? Well, that would be Carta Graph would be one of those tools that would help us get there. This is kind of a snapshot here of what we can do in Carta Graphs. So these are a bunch of assets mapped on our software. So I'm showing here some of our more high-ticket items like parks, playgrounds, facilities, bridges, signalized intersections, so on and so forth. So they're all mapped right here. This is an asset overview of what we currently have inventoried within Carta Graph. Each of these are at different levels of maturity of how we're using them. So some are a complete inventory with inspections and work orders being assigned to them, but others we're still working on the inventories, inspections, and so on and so forth. And this is actually just a snapshot of how many assets the city maintains. So DPW is responsible for the vast majority of physically owned assets in the city. On top of all these things that you see here, we also have sidewalks. We also have all the building components that Peter alluded to, so HVAC, plumbing, and we also have things such as decorative fencing that we're working on getting into Carta Graph and inventorying and inspecting. So Carta Graph allows us to track our operational costs down to the asset level and each individual asset as well. This example that you see in front of you here is a set of steps in one of our neighborhoods, and we've deployed iPads to our field users. So our construction crews who go and repair these steps are actually assigning work directly to that set of steps. This applies to all the assets that we would put in here. So this is similar to our buildings, this is similar to our parks, playgrounds, so on and so forth. At that level, they're saying who worked on it, what equipment was used on it, what material was used on it, and that all rolls up to the asset record. As a result, we can quickly run reports on things, so we can say, for instance, this is how much we spent in a council district on just steps, or this is how much we spent on facility improvements, which allows a lot more reporting than we were ever able to do in the past. In addition, this is kind of the inspection side that we were alluding to. This is a pretty simple example of our pavement. We actually contracted with Carta Graph to do an inspection of every pavement segment in the city, which is about 17,000 individual segments. Here we have two different condition categories. We can weight the condition categories differently, so some can have more value than others, and then that would calculate a score for that segment. This information can then be used to determine how we should invest. So before, we had our crews going out and inspecting and entering that into an older pavement management system, but now we can actually use this, map it, and do exercises to build scenarios to show how should we invest our money to get the biggest bang for our buck. And this can be applied to all assets. So we're also applying this to our facilities. There's a lot more condition categories for our facilities, which is why I didn't use that as an example. But we've contracted with another outside company, Macero, to do the study of our facilities and enter that into Carta Graph.
Okay. So we want to utilize Carta Graph to make data-driven decisions. We don't want to just have people saying, there's a senior center in my neighborhood that needs some loving. There's streets in this council district that haven't been touched in years and they really need touched. If we gather all that information in Carta Graph, we can then make data-driven decisions. We can see the conditions of it, and we can see how much we utilize those with our programmatic assessments, and we can then feed that information to budget, to prioritize what we need to do. We can also take the trends of how much money did we put in sidewalks, how much money did we put into playgrounds, and then build out long-term plans for that, seeing this is how much we need to spend to maintain these things every year. So we want to use Carta Graph to help us make data-driven decisions.
So what are the next steps to getting there? One is to continue to validate our inventories. So as I mentioned, different assets in there are at different levels of usage. We have a lot of work to do. Peter mentioned that we have numerous lists. Well, we have numerous lists, and sometimes even when you combine those lists, that's still not everything. So there's a lot of work to do to validate what assets are actually out there. In addition to giving our operations crews the iPads, that helps create a feedback loop. So if they're on the field and they're working on, let's say, a retaining wall that is not in Carta Graph, that lets us know that it's not on our records and we need to add it. So it's going to improve the accuracy of our databases. In addition, we would like to continue to integrate this into the daily workflow of our staff. So to make this as integral of part of their day-to-day as Excel or as 311 or as email. Lastly, we'd like to expand to other departments. So clearly we're working with OMB and DPW, but we would also like to work with city planning, which we have some on certain projects, or IMP, so we are working with Jeffrey to put the capital projects in, but we see some benefit to perhaps expanding more within those departments or even to other departments. And that's pretty much what we're here to discuss with you all today.
Okay, thank you, guys.
Yep.
Thanks.
Okay, so next up, we're going to talk in small groups as part of our breakout sessions. But to set the context for those discussions, I just want to reiterate why we brought you all together here. One, we wanted to share some updates on key projects that we were working on as part of the city operations area of the roadmap. So you heard from some of those folks today. In our small groups discussion, I'm hoping that you can provide ideas about how some of those specific projects can be expanded and maybe built upon. You can highlight things that are ongoing in your departments, maybe things that you've started that weren't on the original roadmap, or maybe new ideas that you have about ways that we can use open data, we can use technology to improve city operations. And for those of you who aren't city employees and are part of a partner organization that might work with the city, we really want your perspectives in working with the city on ways that we can make it easier and more collaborative working with you on a number of different projects.